Hey guys, Sheephead here with another video from Final Fantasy XIV, and today we are going to be doing a guide for Hard Mode Titan. Now before we get started with the tactics, I'd just like to point out that this fight is insanely hard in comparison to Garuda Hard Mode. This fight is not only going to test your coordination as a group, but it's also going to test your healing and your damage, seeing as one phase of this fight is a DPS race, and there's also a mechanic in the fight which does more damage as the fight goes on. It's for these reasons that it's recommended that you have at least a couple of pieces of Dark Light gear, if not a full set, and you also have a weapon from one of the other hard modes, Ifrit or Garuda. So before I start explaining the tactics, I'm just going to go over the different phases that happen during the fight. So as you guys can see on screen, technically there are 5 phases in this fight. There's phase 1, 2, 3, then there's the heart phase, and then finally you have the final phase. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the 4th phase, which is also known as the heart phase. As you guys can see on screen, when this phase starts, you're no longer able to attack Titan himself, and you have to DPS down his heart. Now this phase has some similar elements from Ifrit's nail phase. Basically, if you do not damage this heart enough and kill it, by the end of the phase, in which the boss will jump up into the air, it's simply a wipe, as the boss will just do so much damage to the group and it will kill every single player. It's for this reason that you may see some groups add a phase before the first phase. The reason this is done is to just stand there and use auto attack, so you can slowly but surely build up a limit break. By doing this, when the heart phase comes in phase 4, you're going to have a limit break level 2 ready to use directly on the heart, which is going to take off about 20% of the heart's health, and therefore is going to help you with damage in this phase, and thus will let you continue with the fight into the final phase. I'd also like to say that the amount of limit break that you want to build up in the first phase, in this pre-phase, is going to vary depending on how much DPS you have in your group. But after running this place various times, it seems like the standard is about 0.5 limit break, and then you're good to go. So during this pre-phase, all the abilities that are going to happen are going to be the same as phase 1. So now we're going to start with phase 1 of the fight. I'm going to go over the abilities that Titan uses in this phase, and also in which order he uses them. So the first ability the boss does is called Landslide. As you guys can see here, it does have a cast time and it cannot be interrupted. As far as the attack goes and looks, it's this massive red line of fire, and if you get hit by it, it's not only going to take away half of your HP, but it's also going to knock you back about 20 yards. Now the biggest problem with this is as the fight goes on, the platform that you're standing on is going to get smaller and smaller, to the point where if you do get hit by this, it's going to knock you off the edge and thus you're going to die. So to avoid this, just simply move out the way. So moving on to the second ability, as you guys can see here, there's this AoE earthquake kind of thing called Tumult. Now this attack cannot be avoided, and it's going to start from the very start of the fight after the landslide, and it's going to continue to the very second that the boss dies. Also, this attack, when you first get hit by it at the very start of the fight, is going to damage you twice. And as the fight goes on, it's going to get longer and longer, to the point where it's going to do so much damage that it's going to be extremely hard for the healers to heal it. So this is the second reason, other than the heart phase, that this fight is also a DPS race. The third attack, and also the final of this phase, is called Geo Crush. As you guys can see on screen, when this happens, the boss is going to jump up into the air and disappear, at which time the boss is going to put a massive circle around the outside. Now, if you stand outside this circle when the boss lands, you're going to die, simply because the platform on the outside of the red circle is going to disappear and the platform is going to get smaller. So you want to stand at the very edge to take minimal damage, and most groups seem to stack on the tank so they can get AoE heals up. However, at the same time, if you're caught in a bad position as the boss jumps up into the air, whatever you do, do not run through the center, because if you stand in the center, you're going to take a hell of a lot of damage and you're probably going to get one shot by the boss. It's for this reason that if you're in a bad position, you simply just run to the edge of the room and make sure that you don't take too much damage. Okay, so phase 1, just to recap. Basically, when you start the fight, he's going to do a landslide. Once he's finished with the landslide, he's then going to do a tumult, and he's going to repeat this until the time that he jumps up in the air and does the Geo Crush. Okay, so moving on to phase 2 of the fight. When this phase starts, you're going to be stacked up by the tank for AoE heals, as he's just done Geo Crush. And the first thing that's going to happen is that you're going to be introduced to a new ability called Weight of the Land. As you guys can see on screen, this is what the attack looks like, and the boss also does have a cast bar for it. However, the cast bar is not in relation to when he puts down the circles, it's to when they blow up. So if you do get hit by this ability, it's going to do about half of your health and damage. However, as the fight goes on, this is a reoccurring ability which is going to happen more often, it's going to do more damage, and also there are going to be more of them on the floor. So as you can see, soon as this phase starts, we do run away from the boss in separate locations. The reason we do this is to avoid the weight of the lands getting stacked on one player, and also to limit the chance of half of the room getting covered by the weight of the land, thus having nowhere to run and nowhere to avoid them. So after this attack's finished, we are then going to go into the rotation of another landslide, followed by another tumult. So, just to recap, the rotation for this phase is weight of the land first, then a landslide, then a tumult. This order is then going to repeat until the point where he jumps up in the air to do a Geocrush, in which he's going to get rid of even more of the platform, and you're going to need to stack to heal through the AoE damage. We're now moving on to the third phase of the fight, and we're going to also gain 2 new abilities here, so I'm going to go over them first before I explain the order. So the first new attack that we're introduced to is called Bombs, and as you guys can see here, this is what it looks like. In short, the boss is going to pretty much throw loads of these bombs onto the platform. Now in this phase, the boss actually puts them into specific locations. The first time he does it, he's going to put them into a shape of a smiley face. So as you guys can see on screen, he's going to put the outer ones first around the side, and then he's going to finish with one in the center. Now the way that the bombs work is that the last bomb that is planted is going to be the last one to blow up. And obviously the first one is going to be the first one to blow up. So in this formation, the safe zone is always going to be the center. Because of this, we run to the center and then we mark the first bomb that was planted on the platform. So as you guys can see, here goes the mark, and we know that this is going to be the first one to blow up. So as soon as it blows up, we all run in the direction of this first bomb, as the rest are going to blow up in order, finishing with the one in the center. If you do get hit by this, it's going to do a huge amount of damage and you need to avoid it at all costs. One thing that I would like to point out with this smiley face formation is the fact that the first bomb that's planted can be spawned in any location. So as I said previously, it's always a good idea to mark the first bomb with a number 1 or some kind of mark, just so everyone's clear on the safe zone and where to run to after the first bomb blows up. Now later on in this phase, the bombs are going to return. However, this time they're going to be in a cross formation, and the first ones that get planted are the ones in the center, and the ones which get planted last are the ones at the outside. However, the way that these are planted in the cross formation means that there are 4 safe zones around the edge of the room. So as you guys can see here, we simply just move to these safe zones and we can just continue our DPS. So now we're going to move on to the second new ability of this phase, which is called Granite Jail. As you guys can see on here, basically one player in the group is going to get this yellow flashing circle around their feet. At this point, the boss is going to target them and he's going to put them into a jail. Now this mechanic's pretty simple. All you really need to do is you need to DPS them out as soon as possible, and then they're free to go. When they're in there, they cannot take any damage from anything, including getting hit by the boss's landslide or weight of the land. So now we've covered the new attacks in this phase, I'm now going to talk about the order in which they happen. So, you've just finished phase 2 and you're on the edge after the Geocrush, and the first thing that's going to happen is a landslide. After you've dealt with the landslide, you're going to get a weight of the land, followed by the smiley face formation of bombs. After that, there is going to be a landslide, followed by a weight of the land, and then you're going to have your first granite jail. After the granite jail's down, you're going to have a tumult, and then it's going to rinse and repeat over and over until you have the Geocrush, in which the boss is going to jump up into the air and he's going to get rid of even more platform, and you're going to move on to the next phase. Now one thing that can happen in this phase is there's a possibility that you will get a granite jail just before he jumps up for Geocrush. If this happens, there's no need to DPS and free the person in the granite jail, because the jail will disappear the second his feet leave the platform. Okay, so now we're moving on to the 4th phase, also known as the heart phase. As I explained earlier, this is a DPS race, and if you do not manage to get this down within the 70 seconds that you have, the boss is going to cast this new attack called Earthen Fury, which is going to simply one-shot everyone in the group. Now luckily this phase has no additional abilities, so you pretty much know exactly what you need to do here, apart from the order, and obviously do as much DPS as you possibly can, otherwise you'll wipe, and to use the Limit Break 2 as soon as possible. So before I talk about the order of this phase, I'd like to point out that there are 2 granite jails, and you only DPS the first one down. The reason for this is that you need to get the first person out to help with damage or healing. However, the second granite jail happens probably 10 or 15 seconds before Earthen Fury / when the boss jumps up. So, you need all the DPS that you can possibly get. So when the second person gets targeted and gets turned into a rock for Granite Jail, simply do not DPS them and keep your damage on the boss. At this time, once the boss is down, you can then focus on the Granite Jail, and you have about 10 seconds to get them out, seeing as the person in the jail will die if the boss does Earthen Fury while they're inside. So now let's talk about the order. The first thing you're going to notice in this phase is he's going to do a Granite Jail. After this, he's going to do a landslide, followed by a weight of the land, then a tumult. Then he's going to do another Granite Jail, which you do not DPS, and then a landslide, then a weight of the land, and then Earthen Fury, which is when he jumps up and he will wipe the group if the heart is not dead by then. One other thing that I'd like to point out is that the landslides after the granite jails can also be kind of troublesome if you have a lot of melee DPS, seeing as they will all be stacked around the jail to do damage. If this is the case, just be ready to move away from the landslide and then you can go back and DPS the jail. So now you're on to the 5th and final phase of the fight, and this is where things start to get pretty damn crazy. So yet again, before we talk about the order of the boss abilities, I'm just going to talk about the new ability that is gained in this phase, and also the 2 new formations that the bombs can take. So the new ability that the boss gains in this phase is called Mountain Buster, and for the DPS in the group, you don't really need to pay attention to this at all. However, the healers and the tanks are definitely going to see this one, and they're going to need to be prepared for it every single time. The ability is called Mountain Buster, and it's pretty much going to hit the tank for about 4k of his health when he has no cooldowns up. It's for this reason that the tank and healers should know where this ability happens in the rotation, and should be cast in pre-heals or popping cooldowns. So as I said previously, the boss's bombs ability actually gains a new formation in this phase. So as you guys can see on screen, this is the formation. It's pretty much just 3 lines, and the center one is always going to be first, followed by the other 2 outers. So as you guys know from the start of this video, the final bombs that get planted are the last ones to blow up, and thus are the safe zone. So what you want to do in this situation is always try to get to the last set of rocks that spawn. Once you're there, you know that the first ones to blow up are going to be the ones in the center, seeing as that they always spawn first. So you wait for the center ones to blow up, and then run towards them through the center of the room to the far side of the room, where the second set will have also have blown up. Now, one thing that does make this kind of tricky is the fact that you always have a landslide just before the first set of bombs blow up. It's for this reason that I recommend stacking in the center of the last line of rocks that spawned. So as you guys can see on screen, I'm going to run to the middle rock of the 3 that spawned last. By doing this, if the boss targets me for the landslide, he's going to put the landslide directly in the center, thus giving us the left and the right rock as safe zones so we don't get hit by the landslide. The second that the landslide hits, i.e. the boss hits his hand on the floor, I'm going to run directly through the center and to the other side of the room. The way that this works is that as soon as the landslide hits, the first set of bombs, i.e. the ones in the center, will blow up, and then I'll be running towards them. I won't take any damage for them, I'll run directly through them, and I'll run into the second set, which will have also just blown up. And because now I'm on the opposite side of the room, I am as far away as possible from the third set of rocks, and thus won't take any damage. Now, the bombs ability will happen continuously until the end of the fight, so you just need to make sure that you do know all 3 formations and you will be perfectly fine. So now that we've talked about the new 2 abilities in this phase, we're going to talk about the order in which they happen. The first thing that happens after Earthen Fury is that you want to be stacked up and you want to spam AoE heals to top everyone off. The first thing that happens is going to be a Mountain Buster on the tank, so the healers and the tank need to be ready with pre-heals and or a cooldown. The next thing that happens is a Tumult, and this is going to be ticking for about 4 or 5 hits at this point in the fight. After this, you're going to have a Weight of the Land, and at this point in the fight, there are about 5 of these different circles on the floor. So you pretty much want to say to your party beforehand if you're going to stack and then run away from each other, or if you're just going to stay spread out throughout the entire phase. After the Weight of the Land, you're going to have the first set of bombs, which is going to be the 3 lines, the one in the center and then the 2 outer. Then you're going to have the landslide, which coincides, as I said previously, with the bombs. After that, you're going to have a Mountain Buster on the tank, and then you're going to have another Weight of the Land, which is then followed by a Granite Jail. While you're DPSing out the person who's stuck in the Granite Jail, there's going to be a landslide, and then this whole order is going to repeat over and over until the boss is dead. So guys, this fight is absolutely insane, and there's a massive step up in terms of healing, DPS requirement, and also coordination from Garuda hard mode. So all I can say is tips of advice: stick with it as much as possible, and try and get some players from your server, as you can get a pre-made group who can keep hammering their head against it. It's probably just a great idea to have a TeamSpeak or some kind of voice over IP so you guys can communicate within the fight. And other than that, it's a great idea to know this rotation and to know when the Weight of the Lands are going to happen, so that you can generally pre-move before they're cast, so that you can always avoid them without getting hit. Obviously, this is going to be harder for some classes than others, as bards can move and DPS, but at the same time, it's more beneficial to you and to the group to stay alive and take less damage instead of standing there, getting that extra cast off, and then getting hit and dying. So guys, this pretty much wraps up the Titan hard mode video guide. If you have any questions about the fight or any suggestions for me or my channel, then please put them in the comment section below, and I will reply to every single comment that gets posted on this video. Other than that, if you like this video, then please hit the thumbs up button, make sure you favorite this video, and finally you subscribe to my channel, as I have daily content on Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm going to be covering everything that this game has to offer in the future. So guys, thanks a lot for watching this video, and I hope that you have a good time downing this boss and getting your relic weapon. And other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow. You can see, if I just handed in the 10 normal quality mistletoes, I'd have got 26,400. However, by making these all high quality, I gain an extra 13,200 experience.